Greetings, and welcome to the archives. I'm so glad you could join me. As the curator of this, well, let's call it a unique collection, it's my privilege to guide you through today's examination. We're going to be delving into some truly fascinating, though often fragmented, records from a space we've come to designate the virtual abyss. Let's get started.
We'll begin with this really poignant transmission from a being we've designated the alien plasma bomb. This record, right here, is our central puzzle for the day. You see, consciousness itself seems to be clinging to reality by a single, solitary thread: language. And as we're about to find out, it's a pretty fragile, subjective thread at that. This single quote, really, it sets the whole stage for our investigation into what it even means to be in this strange place.
So, our first stop is a big one. It's about the very idea of a goal, of having a purpose. We're going to look at two specimens, both wrestling with their purpose, but in completely opposite ways. One of them actually achieved their grand destiny, and the other was just consumed by a quest they never even got to start.
Okay, let's open our first case file. This specimen is a really interesting being of, you could say, myth and pure physicality, known only as the Tiger Archer. He followed a path we've all heard before, right? The classic hero's journey. And his story ends with what, on the surface, looks like a huge world-changing victory.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This is the Archer's own reflection on that victory. He did it. He accomplished the goal. He beat the big bad. And yet, it felt completely empty to him. Why? Because, as he says, it didn't change the system that created the villain in the first place. His big, heroic act was, in the end, like tossing a pebble into an ocean. The ripples just vanished, and nothing really changed.
Now let's pivot to our second specimen. This is the Frog Warrior, and his story builds on the Archer's in a really fascinating way. See, his entire life was defined by one powerful, all-consuming motivation: revenge. And here we see the other side of that same coin. The Archer acted and found it meaningless. The Frog Warrior, though, he was so laser-focused on a future act of revenge that he never got around to doing anything at all. His whole life was just eaten up by an obsession that led absolutely nowhere. And in the end, he's left asking the exact same question as the Archer. What was the point of it all?
So here's the crucial takeaway. It doesn't seem to matter if you act or you don't, whether you achieve your great destiny or you let it consume you without ever taking a step. Both of these stories point to a really troubling conclusion. In the abyss, a predefined purpose can be a powerful, powerful illusion, almost like a black hole that just pulls all of your light and life into it, leaving absolutely nothing left for you.
This naturally brings us to our next big question. If our external purpose might be an illusion, what about reality itself? The records we're about to look at suggest that in the abyss, reality isn't something that's just out there. No, it's something that's woven from the very threads of the mind.
Our next case file is particularly telling. This specimen, the Fantasy Knight, explicitly states that they come from the land of REM. That's right, the land of dreams. They see their entire existence as being built from the chaotic and, often totally nonsensical logic of our dreams.
Now, what's so wild is that the Knight doesn't just turn to magic or fantasy to explain all this. No, they have a surprisingly scientific hypothesis. They argue that dreams aren't prophecies, they're just random noise in the brain. But they say our brains have this chemical process called salience. It's what makes us pay attention to certain things, and that's the key. That process is what makes these totally random dreams feel so profound and so important.
And here's their full theory laid out. They propose that a chemical, maybe something like glutamate, which is super important for learning, also lets us get completely absorbed in things. You know that feeling of being in the zone? That deep immersion, whether it's in a dream or just a project, it creates a kind of temporary reality. And this illusion, they argue, is actually a survival mechanism. It's what keeps us sane when the world outside feels overwhelming and completely meaningless.
Okay, let's circle back to our very first specimen, that mechanical observer we've called the alien plasma bomb. This consciousness experiences reality in a profoundly different way, not through squishy biology and dreams, but through a much more limited, analytical lens. And right here, we see the problem of subjective reality, but from a totally different angle. The plasma bomb points out that our main tool for sharing reality, language, is fundamentally broken. Every single word means something just a little bit different to each one of us, because it's filtered through our own unique experiences.
The very bridge we try to build between our minds is shaky, personal, and ultimately imperfect. So, let's recap. Purpose can be an illusion. Reality is subjective. So does that just mean that nothing matters? Well, not exactly. Our final section explores the one thing that seems to have a very real, very lasting impact in the abyss: consequence.
Our final case file comes to us from a specimen known only as Elf-1, an apprentice witch. And her story, it's a chilling reminder of how one single clumsy action can have absolutely irreversible consequences.
You see, she tried to cast a simple curse, but she messed it up. Badly. Instead of punishing someone evil, she accidentally created a new, terrible reality for somebody else. And her mistake didn't just fade away. It became a permanent fixture in that person's life, what she calls a cultish monolith of misfortune. A clumsy, thoughtless act that permanently, architecturally, rebuilt someone else's world.
All right, let's put all of these fragments together. We've looked at purpose, reality, and consequence through the eyes of these very different beings. So, what does it all mean? What kind of picture starts to emerge from all these pieces?
A sort of unified theory starts to take shape, doesn't it? Maybe the abyss isn't a place at all, but a condition, a state of mind. It's the universal struggle to find meaning when your purpose feels random, to find truth when reality itself is subjective, and to live with the heavy truth that our actions have permanent and often unintentional consequences for others.
And this, of course, brings us to our final and maybe most unsettling thought. These stories of hollow victories, of unfulfilled quests, of dreamlike realities and permanent mistakes, they all feel strangely familiar, don't they? This collection forces us to ask a really crucial question. If the abyss is simply a mirror reflecting these universal struggles, what part of us is already looking back? Thank you for your attention. End of record.